Hey everyone, Chris Stegall here with MK Partners, joined once again by Matt Kaufman. Matt, thanks for hopping on today.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yep, and it is getting down to the end of the month, down to the end of the year. And the good news is that means the Spring 24 release is just on the horizon. And this week we got release notes. So always an exciting time.
It's a holiday miracle.
Yeah. And so I figured today we can take a stroll through the release notes, do sort of our first round of our release highlights look, where we take a look at some of the new features, updates, and upgrades headed to Salesforce, and earmark some of our favorites so that you can see what's coming in this, thousands and thousands of pages of release notes that get dropped.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to throw the link to these the release notes in the description of the video here. You can also find them on our blog, Creme de la CRM, where we'll write up some more of these in more detail. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in here. I think I earmarked a couple here. First, we've got search for records with the Lightning Record Picker component. This is a component that's going to be able to be added to a page to help you quickly grab a record. And I know when I brought this up, Matt, you were like, that seems familiar.
Yeah. So this is one that I'm super excited about. So years ago, we had this need for a lot of our projects where we're building essentially like a lookup on or a master detail field, but in a custom screen on an LWC, a Lightning Web Component. And it wasn't something that was built in. You could do a text input, you could do numbers and stuff like that, but we couldn't do a lookup to different types of records and have the same kind of look and feel that you'd have when you're doing it in a standard screen. And so what we used to do is actually to use some open source code that on GitHub that an individual named Philippe Ozil, I apologize if I got it slightly wrong, had written. And at the time, Philippe did not work for Salesforce. And I think he ended up working for Salesforce because he had built such cool stuff. And so we would take this code and we would use that to kind of provide the same type of user interface look and feel that customers expected. And now all of that code, which what consisted of Lightning Web Component and Apex test coverage, is replaced by this nice little easy to use built-in snippet right there.
Yeah. So it almost feels like this could have been an idea exchange win that is not being reported as such, but that's...
Yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of times when there is a workaround or a solution, people don't necessarily seek out the idea exchange to vote or to submit. And like I said, this was the standard. I used it. I know other people at the company used it, and even other people I know in the ecosystem used this one individual's code. So now it seems like it's built in. I'm sure that we could still have value to the code that's out there, but this will make it a lot faster for sure.
Yeah. Next up, as a marketer, one that caught my eye is this Kickstart campaign creation with preset options. And so this is going to be an update to the campaign object that's going to let us pre-configure and pre-populate campaigns with some draft content created either by the marketing team or potentially by Einstein, and choosing from your components that you want to add. So it almost adds a element of that Marketing Cloud Journey Builder or that Pardot Marketing Cloud Account Engagement Studio Builder, but being called from inside the campaign object and then using Flow to actually build the sort of nurture journey, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I think this is a really pleasant surprise. It's rare that we see a lot of new functionality for the campaign object. It's one of those like core Sales Cloud objects that we tend not to see too much focus on because of the Marketing Cloud features that are available. So this is really nice for people that just needed a little more than keeping track of a group or a membership or something like that. You can now actually do some proactive emails and maybe even other stuff with that Flow functionality. So yeah, it's nice to see that.
Yeah. And yeah, to echo that, it's also the campaign object on the CRM side has always felt a little underserved from the marketing perspective. because it has the same name as the campaign component in Marketing Cloud or the campaign component in Pardot, and they all behave differently and sort of like want to be pointed at each other, but because they serve different purposes, it's always been kind of that like, how and why, and do I give the sales team access to Pardot so they can see the campaigns there where it's really a measurement of their source, or do I have to like be double, dataing and moving everything over and duplicating campaigns on the CRM side? So this, I feel like, should inspire marketers to build their campaigns on the CRM side and sort of solve that problem.
Yeah, you'll note that the campaign object has really made it, though, when it's Lightning campaigns or Einstein campaigns or something like that, then we know that, it's made it to the big leagues.
Yeah, Campaign Cloud will be the final form. All right. Matt, did you have anything that caught your eye as you flip through here?
So I write a lot of code, as most people know. And so I tend to look at some of the developer enhancements that came out. And on the Apex section, there were some. Thank you for pulling it up. So these are ones that I usually, very first thing I look at is to see, okay, what's changing in Apex? And I was, I think, happiest to see not that there were necessarily specific changes, but that the changes that are being implemented are all idea exchange delivered changes. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And to me, that's so important because it means that the team is listening to the community, the whole ecosystem. When we go out there and say, hey, we really need this feature, it's important to us. And so you'll notice that the first ones listed are all idea exchange delivered. And some of them are simple, and maybe we had like workarounds that we could do. Or, like you could just, okay, we're just going to do an if statement every time, something like that. But, they still were like, no, even though there's a workaround that everyone knows and can do, we're going to build this in and spend time and money to deliver this feature. So I really think that that's important. In fact, when I was looking at this, I was like, wow, I wonder how many items in the release notes are actually idea exchange delivered. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should write some code. I didn't do it for this video, but I'm very tempted to go through and see how many items in the release notes are. Can we just do it simply by searching? That'd be funny instead of writing code. I don't know if it'll work because I think it's going to just show you the first X results. But I'm really happy to see that. I hope that Salesforce markets that and shows, hey, these are how many were delivered. Maybe it'll be on the idea exchange itself. If you're watching this video, depending on when you're watching it, you'll notice we have that little yellow banner on the screen right now saying that, by the way, the release is in preview. So there's always the chance that some of these things end up slipping and not making the release. But hopefully once the release is final, we'll be able to get that count. And then I'd love to see a comparison of the last release, this release, and then the next release, and kind of see, is there equal priority for these idea exchange ideas, or is it increasing, is it decreasing, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see idea exchange ideas actually make it onto the roadmap and actually get served up in a release. I know last release for winter 23, I believe it was called, we did a look at the specific idea exchange wins that were a result of that. So I'll be sure in this again.
The last release is winter 24.
It's winter 24 then. Yeah.
Right. But maybe, depending when you're watching this, maybe it's something else already.
That's true. Yeah. But it is easy to think that the idea exchange is just a pit that you throw your ideas into and to sort of sate the demands from an ever-expanding customer base. But it's not. They actually do respond to those. I try to check it about once a quarter so that I can always have some votes in before the release. And they'll usually announce prioritization a month before the release notes come out too, if you want to boost anything up or down. But I do think it's one of those things that our audience should be encouraged to participate in, and that I probably ought to be putting together a list of, here's the ones that I want to win, please vote for these to our customers so that we get what we want.
Yeah, I also like to know, okay, what's the threshold that the average idea gets implemented? I know that, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio of 1 vote equals 1 point. It's 1 to 10. But we can all do that math and figure out how many votes something has gotten. But I'd like to know, like, okay, if I have an idea, like realistically, how many people do I have to lobby to vote for it before someone's going to take it seriously and possibly implement it?
Yeah.
So we probably should collect some of that data and figure it out.
Yeah. I feel like it would also be interesting if there was like a audit trail on the ideas.
Yeah.
Just because if I would like to see how, like, what the original source was, because I can also imagine if I'm Salesforce and I have the roadmap for the next 3 releases and I have a bunch of ideas, I would throw them on the idea exchange to see what gets upvoted and then be like, great,
Right.
I don't need to build all of it. I can build just the top 3 features.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I don't know if it's used for that purpose to kind of like do market research, but that is a great idea. Maybe you should log that on the idea exchange. That they proactively post the features that they're planning. Because looking through the releases, I was looking, especially like under the sales enhancements, there's a lot of things that I didn't know this was, going to come out. There's no way for me to know. But it would be kind of neat to have some of that advanced notice that here's something that we're considering. What do you guys think? And let us vote on that as well. And then when it comes to prioritization, we could say, you know what, this is a great idea. Yes, you should build it, but all these other things are actually more important. So can you focus on that first?
Yeah.
And I see little issues in the app on a regular basis, especially in setup where like things sometimes are still classic and stuff like that, yeah, it's annoying, but we could log those and then let us decide. Is that something that we all feel is more important than a new enhancement? Getting the delete page layout screen to work properly, something like that. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a holiday miracle.
And then last up here, I thought it might be fun to take a look at updates coming to Flow Builder. It is a tool that I have been trying to get more and more comfortable with and fluent in. And I know, Matt, as a developer, it's also something that you have more experience using than I do, but like historically not your first go-to for solving a problem, but it's what Salesforce is pushing as their new automation tool. And now that we've moved away from Process Builder and Workflow. And so I thought
definitely not using Workflow or Process Builder anymore. So it's Flow or Code.
Yeah.
And when possible, try to do it with Flow.
Yeah. So I figured we could run through these at a high level and see if any of them stand out to us as helpful, useful, or I need to know more.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting if you go down the list, like there's some logic here. So the first one, send data to Data Cloud using flows, I think is really important. The idea of Data Cloud is that we're going to aggregate all this data from different sources. And there's different documentation out there already, like how to load data from an Amazon S3 bucket and things like that. And it's great because now we can just load all this external data. But we should make it as easy as possible to load data from Salesforce too. And so having a real-time process using Flow to push data from Salesforce into Data Cloud would be perfect. And so that's coming out already. My guess is that was always the plan, and it was just didn't make it for the last release. And so that's nice to see that that's happening there. I know for us as an App Exchange partner, we get data about licensing and features and things like that in our Salesforce org. And so we want to be able to push that into Data Cloud and kind of build this bigger picture about our clients. And sometimes, we might know that an individual works at a business. Let's just say John works at Acme, and that's our primary point of contact. But then we find out, oh, Sally also works there. And so we want to be able to link all of that. And there are always ways to do it in Salesforce, but it's a little easier to do that type of stuff in Data Cloud.
Yeah. And coupled with the Dreamforce announcement that everybody gets Data Cloud licenses for free now, it makes sense that they would want to make using it as easy as possible, but also to get people more entrenched in that platform.
Right. So if you are an existing client and you don't have Data Cloud yet, or existing customer Salesforce, you don't have Data Cloud yet, you need your system administrator to go to the Your Account screen, which is available from the menu at the top. And once there, you can actually see your contracts and your orders from the past, but you can also order new features or new products And one of the things that you can order now is Data Cloud, and it starts at $0. So you can just order it. You still got to fill out some type of agreement saying that, yes, you're agreeing to use it the right way and stuff like that. But there's just a limit to how much you can store in it and use it. So, but that within that limited free tier, you can use the functionality. It's all fully there. And so that's available to every customer. You might as well try it out, turn it on and play with it, especially, the next 2 weeks or so of the year. We're at the end of the year right now. You got a little extra time. Data Cloud's the perfect thing to play with.
Yeah. And that reminded me, I actually missed one of my release highlights that should have been the ability to easily upgrade.
Oh, right. Yes. For
From
customers that are on the
Pro
starter edition of Salesforce, which is kind of like the entry level edition of Salesforce, you can now upgrade to Pro Suite using a self-service e-commerce type of functionality. Super exciting. We often, especially if someone on starter probably doesn't have as much experience with Salesforce, not just the technology, but also dealing with the company. And so they don't necessarily want to talk to an account executive and have to go through calls and demos and things like that, especially if they are talking with a consultant or somebody who maybe is a little more knowledgeable. And so now they can just click the button and do it if they have no questions, and that's the right thing to do. And that'll probably be a lot faster than scheduling meetings and getting on demos. So that's exciting. I really like the look of this page. I know for our apps, I've wanted to build a similar type of page where people can upgrade. And so I probably will model it after this page. It's a nice look.
Yeah, and it looks like it has like an object called comparison. So maybe we'd be able to use the same object on our product pages.
Definitely we can use the look and feel. We'll have to change some of the details, but I like the fact that there's just the one button. It makes it really easy. Now, I'm sure there's a second screen after this. So I don't know if I'll be able to figure out how to look at that screen as well, because I don't have a starter edition in org. But if I can get access to one, then I'll try to look at it and figure it out. But I like the look of it. I like that it's very Salesforce-y, and seems to be easy to understand, which should be the goal. Because like I said, it's really for people who don't have any questions. They just want to go ahead and buy and not have to go through the normal sales process.
Yeah. Cool. And then jumping back to Flow Builder updates, you were saying there was a logical progression to this. So the next one up will be the verify your API connection.
Right. So that one I'm super excited about. And if you think about stuff going from Salesforce or Sales Cloud to Data Cloud, right now, at least, that is an API call. It's not just like Apex or something like that. And so that kind of makes sense. And so I think that these two kind of, maybe we're developed behind the scenes together. And so when you're building integrations, regardless of whether it's Flow or not, there's always this one moment where you're like, I need to test this to see if the connectivity is in place, right? And so if you don't have an API call that you can make to test just the connectivity, that means you're making a real API call. And then you can imagine if we're charging credit cards, you don't want to charge the credit card just to find out, did I hook things up properly? Because then you have to go and void that charge as well. And so it's nice to have this additional option now to just verify the connection, and kind of say, hey, is this working without having to send a real transaction? So that's a nice addition there that will make doing integrations using Flow a little easier in the future, especially debugging. So like every once in a while, we've seen where like an integration just doesn't work. And often it's like midnight. That's a little hint there. But we'll see something like, we'll get an error message the next day and say, oh, the integration didn't work last night. And we're like, well, is it working today? And we're, I don't know yet. No one is, it's too early in the morning. No one's done anything, right? And so then your options are to charge a credit card or do something that is, somewhat permanent, where you're sending data from Salesforce to another system. And so that's always kind of this like, should I, shouldn't I type of moment. This would allow us to kind of eliminate that and say, well, okay, before I send a record to see, is that the problem? Let's just make sure that we still have our connectivity. Sometimes connections do expire. The little thing about midnight, what we often will see if we're getting errors only at midnight is sometimes other systems are down for maintenance. And so, when we go to run it in the morning, it works. And so it doesn't work at midnight or 2 a.m. These like little windows that sometimes other systems will have their downtime. So this allows us to kind of logically decide, okay, well, let's just test, do we have connectivity? If we don't have connectivity, we know everything works. We just lost the connectivity. And if we do have connectivity, then we got to figure out, okay, was it a window or did something else break? And you're back where you started from. But at least you can eliminate the connectivity itself, and that your username and password still work, and that you haven't been locked out or anything like that. So I'm excited about that one.
Yeah. And then the next three, or at least the next two, are components or functionality sort of being added to the flow itself.
Yeah. So these are things where there are like there's always like some type of workaround, but it wasn't an elegant workaround.
Yeah.
So you can see like some are count items in collections more easily. So it's the more easily that's important there. And so it's kind of funny when you think about when we have a workaround, it often is more taxing on the server when we do the workaround, right? We're doing something that's not meant to be done. And so it's yes, we get the job done, but it's worse for Salesforce as a company. We don't pay extra to run that process in an inefficient manner. I don't know how much Salesforce is like paying attention to these things, behind the scenes, because we're talking about a lot of transactions to really make an impact on a server. But these types of functionality, when they build it, then we can do it the right way. And so it's less taxing on the server. So we're using fewer resources, which obviously is good for Salesforce because then they don't necessarily need to raise the rates as much. It's also good for the environment because then we're not generating as much heat or using as much electricity. So these little things are great. It's more easily, like you can see there. They're also in beta, which often means that it could change when it goes generally available. So you do have to be careful if you're going to take advantage of something like that for something critical, that you make sure you read the release notes for the next release and test out any changes when it goes generally available. Just an FYI.
Yeah. And that first one, the ability to repeat a set of fields on a screen flow, is cool. I don't know what the workaround for that was, but their example of, entering beneficiaries for insurance and having the user be able to add as many as you need, or the one that jumps to mind for me is if somebody's tracking event attendance and needs to log, okay, here's another guest, I can just add them to the same screen in the flow instead of like, now let me go to the record, now let me go add additional ones because my flow was only enabled me to add one guest. Should be a big time saver in terms of, and like let you build some flows that work more intuitively.
Yeah, definitely. And not have to build extra fields or variables just to kind of get around these weird issues.
Yeah. And then we've got components reacting to changes on the same screen, which is almost like formula fields in text displays, where you have display text or long text that adjusts based on what the user enters. That's cool.
Right. Yeah, and so this is also some kind of thing where we had workarounds before. Often what we would do in the early days of Flow is there would not be a lot on the screen at any given moment. It'd be like one field only or one input. And so you'd have like these like 20 screens with one input each, but that way we could be really dynamic. And if you looked at the flow itself, there'd be a lot of branches based on what was just entered. That's inefficient from a time perspective. It's also really inefficient for administrators to have to maintain that. So this will make it a lot simpler to maintain the flows. And hopefully, you can make a change and not have to make the change 10 times in the same flow.
Yep, and then
there's a lot of reactive stuff in this release.
Yeah, because the next one, use text templates to react to changes on the same screen, feels very similar. And then we've got validate user input for more screen components. We can now validate values for name, address, data tables, error messages as a result. So that's good. Anything that makes the flows more hands-off and user intuitive, I think, is good, because it's frustrating when you build a flow to the best of your ability, but then you still have to provide a bunch of documentation on how to use it because the edge cases are going to come up frequently enough that
or the users have their own workarounds to get around your flow, and your flow is supposed to be the workaround to get around standard input anyway. And so it's just, yeah, everybody doing their own thing. I like the one, I think it's second to last now, the find and select flow resources more easily. I often have a hard time finding the right resources. I don't know why. I don't see them, or I'm looking for them in the wrong place. And so I'm hoping that will make it easier on me, because I swear I go and I'll look for it. I don't find it. I go somewhere else and I look for it there, and then I don't find it. And I go back to where I started from, and now it's there. I'm like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
But maybe I need to slow down. But maybe this will also help. Obviously, other people must have had issues too. It couldn't just be me. And so hopefully this is, based on market research of what people had said they were expecting elements to be in, that then we'll be able to find them.
Yeah. And I am hoping also that, because it mentions that it's sort of using improved grouping to accomplish this, I'm hoping that it groups the flow created variables and things separately, because I feel like that's one of the things that happens to me, and I've seen happen on our calls, is we're good about naming variables what they are, and then you go to grab a resource and you're like, well, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and it's like, no, that's what I just created. I'm trying to populate that.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. We could log into a pre-release org and try to figure it out, but I'm sure it's better than the current version.
Yeah. So exciting stuff there, headed to Flow as well. I will go ahead and get us back to the home page here. But that is a quick look at some of the most exciting features on this, cursory first look that jumped out to Matt and myself. And Matt, thanks for hopping on, as well as playing that little game of thumbs up, thumbs down with Flow there.
Yeah, happy to do it.
And as always, thank you folks for watching. Please do be sure to like and subscribe. If there are features in these release notes that you would like us to dive into in a video that's more specific to those individual bits of features and functionality, please drop them in the comments here. We'd love to write those up as blog posts, shoot them as videos, and maybe put some demo content together in our preview orgs. As always, check the blog, Creme de la CRM. These Spring 24 features will be hitting orgs at the end of January and then early to mid-February. For orgs out there, we have all of the dates on the blog as well. And thank you once again, Matt, for hopping on.
Well, happy to be here, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays. We'll see you next time.